Hello again, this is the 7th of June 2021 and this is another Autie Thoughty. Today I'm going to be talking about a conversation I've had with a few other of my late diagnosed contacts, which is how could we not know? How did we get well into adulthood without realising that we were autistic people? It is such a major part of who we are and how our minds work and everything we've ever done. How did we last this long without realising what it is? And it can be, quite an upsetting thing to reflect on, really, when you sort of look back through your life and realise all these, very, very obvious signs that you've missed. It's kind of a self-reassurance in a way, I suppose. How did I go 32 years without realising I was an autistic person? I mean, the thing that we always have to remember is, in the past, until very recently, in the last decade maybe, there has been very little awareness of autism at all outside medical research circles. The only people who are really diagnosed with anything a few decades ago were people who were sort of very severely debilitated and had a lot of a lot of very serious issues fitting into mainstream society. Certainly when I was small in the 80s, it just wasn't a thing that, your average member of the public knew about. It wasn't something that school teachers particularly knew about. Unless you were a researcher who specialised in little known conditions, you probably wouldn't have even come across the word. It was only really maybe in the 1990s when there started being sort of more media interest, I think. The film Rain Man was quite big, I think. That's quite a big influence in the sort of public understanding. I mean, it was a very limited understanding, obviously. But that's certainly when I first heard the word, when I started noticing a lot of kind of articles in magazines and documentaries and things that was sort of starting to explore, what this word means, what it is, and I still didn't relate it to myself. It was still very much something that only happened to boys as well, being diagnosed with autism. It was, everything you read about it would mention somewhere, it is overwhelmingly a male thing, which is, again, something that I personally made me think, well, it can't have anything to do with me then. And it is one of those things that is, it's gradually being broken down, that kind of stereotype, that misunderstanding. But it's still something that, the autistic community as a whole, and even the medical profession, still has a long way to go there. I mean, I know someone who in 2019 was told by a professional, a psychologist, women can't be autistic, and actually removed her autism diagnosis, which well, it absolutely blew my mind. Actually, I didn't even realise, anybody still thought that, that it was impossible, absolutely impossible for a woman to be autistic. And as well, I think a lot of the descriptions that you read outside the autistic community, on the medical websites, in scientific papers, in magazine articles, they talk about what autism looks like from the outside, how to tell if your child is on the spectrum, how to tell if your patient, somebody you've met is autistic. It's not. There's very little sort of explaining what it feels like to be an autistic person, and they come out with quite vague things as well. Symptoms. They always call them symptoms, don't they? Talk about it like it's an illness or something. They talk about symptoms like social awkwardness. Lots of people are socially awkward, Intense interests. That's something they call. Well, doesn't everybody have an intense interest in something? And people have interests in playing guitar or doing taekwondo or watching the news. Most people have some sort of an interest, some sort of escape from the world of school or work or whatever else it is that they feel obliged to do. They have an interest or a hobby or whatever to fill their spare time. I mean, even if it's just going to the pub or something, they all have something. You don't actually learn the term special interest and find people talking about how it feels to have a special interest until you actually get involved with the autistic community a lot of the time. Again, a lot of these symptoms, they do sound like other things. I mean, for a long time, I was seeing, top of the list, of autistic traits is always social awkwardness. I thought, yeah, well, I'm very socially awkward. But then, that's not enough to actually say, yes, I am autistic. It is just so common to be a bit shy, kind of nerdy, to have, well, even social anxiety. I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and thought, well, that must be it then. That's it's not autism, it's just social anxiety. And even a lot of the other traits that are kind of further down the list that don't always get mentioned, the physical symptoms of fibromyalgia can sort of sound like the physical effects of autism. The kind of joint pain and headaches and things like brain fog. It can, if you read about the symptoms of fibromyalgia, it can kind of sound like the physicality of autism. Or dyspraxia, being sort of uncoordinated and not very well balanced and sort of struggling with PE at school and things, and no one can really explain why. Maybe you're just dyspraxic. And I'm kind of wondered for a long time if I had a schizoid personality disorder. And and you start reading things, what is it? What is wrong with me? And finding lots and lots of conditions that you might have. Well, certainly I did. I don't know about anyone else. It might be this, it might be that. It's not really this. Could be, perhaps, I have a mild case of that. And never actually putting your finger on what it is. And, autism was just one of these things that was kind of drifting around in the soup of things maybe I have that might explain some of the issues I have had in my life. Because it was something that I started to kind of hear about occasionally. I'd meet someone and say, "Oh, actually, I'm autistic." I thought, really? Really? That's what an autistic person is it? Somebody like you, really? And so finding a lot of people that, I'd befriended, that I found relatable were, sort of coming out as, being autistic, having their own, their official diagnoses and things. And I was thinking, well, that's what autism is it? And again, from that kind of period, it was another decade until I really applied it to myself. I think a lot of this is also down to, not wanting to say you have something that you don't, out of respect for, those who do. I wouldn't want to sort of identify myself as an autistic person without, fully understanding exactly what it is. And also, while there's a bit of a question mark over it, I kind of don't. I felt as if maybe I was kind of being a bit of a hypochondriac. So as I say, I'd looked at, lots of, other kind of psychiatric conditions, neurodiversities and things that might possibly fit some of the criteria, and kind of thought, no, that's actually not what I have. This is not a description of myself. Like the schizoid personality disorder thing, I did feel for a long time kind of very withdrawn, quite agoraphobic. I was a bit of a hoarder, did not enjoy at all interacting with other people. I kind of just wanted to stay at home most of the time and just play on my computer games and stuff. But, I saw that, it always said this generally appears in the teenage years. And although it was, all those symptoms were very strong in my teenage years, it went on a long time before that as well. It went into my childhood. And it's lessened as I've got older. Whereas personality disorders tend to sort of continue with the same sort of level of intensity for most of your life. So yeah, I wrote that one off fairly quickly. So how could I not have known? I think the thing is, unless you really know what the word means, can't identify with it. And how do you know what the word means? Unless you happen to just get lucky sometime and find someone who can either tell you or point you in the direction of, a helpful website or something. I think the internet has been a major force as well in helping people realise all kinds of neurodiversity, really, helping them realise what has actually been the cause of all their problems in life and how to solve them, and provided a sort of helpful, supportive community. Because how would you have known? Up until the mid-90s, when people started getting online and being able to research things, how could you have known that it was even there to know about? Maybe if you went to a library and started looking through medical textbooks, you might come across it, but why would you go searching through medical textbooks unless you knew that there was something there to find? But with the internet, with social media especially, there's just such a wealth of information about all kinds of things. I mean, it's not always reliable, but I think we are a lot better connected than we were 20, 30 years ago, with absolutely every source of knowledge. And there was what was the source of information 30 years ago? There was the telly, there was magazines. If you didn't happen to have the telly on at the right time, or you didn't happen to get your hands on the right newspaper, magazine, or whatever, you were just left in the dark. Or if you happened to watch a documentary that gave unreliable information, how would you know it was unreliable information? If something pops up on Facebook that's controversial, you'll see it's got hundreds of comments of people arguing about it. I think the thing that I keep telling myself, and I keep saying to a couple of my friends as well, is that you couldn't have known. The information was not there for your taking. It was unavailable. If it wasn't for, just getting lucky on social media, we probably still wouldn't know. If I hadn't had met one particular friend of a friend who was a diagnosed autistic and shared some memes on Facebook that I related to and thought, well, I'd better investigate further, it probably wouldn't have happened. Or if it did happen, it would have been many years later. I think it's one of those things, hindsight's always 20/20. You look back knowing what you know now and kick yourself, saying, well, when I was a small child and I was a biter and a bolter and I used to sort of sit in the playground with my hands over my ears, how did I not know I was autistic? How did nobody know? That's what it was when it was so obvious. And it wasn't obvious because, we didn't know what it was. And, when people are making guesses, uneducated guesses as to the cause of your behaviour, like this child is acting up for attention, or this child is depressed and withdrawn, or this child is just a little bit quirky, doing their own thing. When you don't actually have any other explanation for it, you take that on board and you decide, yeah, that must be what it is. I mean, even, when they're saying this child isn't trying hard enough, and you know for sure that you are doing everything you can, it's hard to argue that is not the case. Like I could never run and climb like all the other kids in my PE class at school. And, I was just constantly getting told off for not trying hard enough. Well, I knew I was doing the best I could. I was absolutely exhausted at the end of the lesson. I was really running as fast as I could, and it wasn't fast enough. I was really trying with all my might to climb up a rope, and I couldn't do it. And the teacher would say, well, everyone else can. So, yeah, well, everyone else can. I must be able to do it. Were they just trying harder than me? How could they be trying harder than me? They weren't bigger or stronger than me. It made no sense, but, the best explanation I had was that I was not trying hard enough. Or I knew that I wasn't sort of deliberately doing this for attention. But, they were the only two explanations I had. Either I wasn't trying hard enough, or I was just playing up for attention. Nobody ever suggested to me that, maybe it was autism, because nobody knew that option was there. You see how difficult it becomes to answer a question if you don't know all the possible answers. It's like having a multiple choice quiz, but all the answers you're given, all the options, are wrong. Like, what's 2 plus 2? Is it A, 1, B, 7, C, 123? Well, it's none of those, I suppose. 1 is the closest, is it? I don't know. Maybe? Is 7 a bit closer? Yeah, it must be. I don't know. It's neither of those. It's something else that isn't here. That's how you can not know. That is why it takes until well into adulthood to understand our own behaviour and also the behaviour of others. And to understand all the things that we have been puzzling over, and everybody who knows us has been puzzling over, has been getting wrong all these years. That's how our parents cannot know, our teachers, and everybody we've ever met cannot know. And even if someone had suggested to me, when I was maybe 20 or so, maybe you're autistic, I think I'd probably have laughed, because actually I did when I was 17. do this sort of personality test thing that, it's supposed to say whether you had a male or a female brain, and it came out with, I had such an extreme male brain, I must be severely autistic. And I just laughed about it. I thought, oh, I've done something wrong here. Because I had very little idea what autism was. I thought it was some kind of learning disability. I thought it was, all autistic people were sort of very high needs, they sort of be in a care home or something. I had no idea whatsoever what it was, or how it could apply to me. And I just laughed about it because I thought, no, I can't possibly be. Yes, unless you realise that the information is there to know, you can't look for it. And that's how we did not know. And that's the end of today's lecture. See you next time.